60 seconds, one story, and I want to open up a bit of a discussion and show some information about the Aboriginal industry and some of the debates that have been going on. Before I do that, I understand that this is a topic that's fraught with bullshit, and it is all bullshit. So if you identify as Indigenous and whatever, and you're upset at somebody talking, what you need to do is replace the idea in your mind that that's some racist colonial person and replace it with that's a concerned citizen that cares a lot about children and the children who are growing up in these communities and they're not getting to where they need to go in life. Okay. So that's the first thing. Now, if you're a racist scumbag and you're hearing this video and you're getting interested and excited and like, yeah, you tell them, right? Replace that person who you think is Aboriginal in your head and replace it with a child that didn't do anything wrong to anybody. And if you're 10, 11, you haven't done anything wrong to anybody. Okay? Replace that with a child, and then that's who we're talking about. Okay? We need to really frame this properly. There's too much politics, mining companies, Labor Party, Greens Party, the Aboriginal industry itself is rife with these people that couldn't care less. They are collecting, my friends, collecting. So let's look at a couple of things, shall we? The growth of the Indigenous population is dubious, and we know this. Look at the population stats from 2000, that's 19 something million. And look at the stats on 2024, it's now 27 something million. The magic of GDP helps us do the maths, so I don't have to worry about it. And that's a 40% growth in population. You put the same numbers through for the Indigenous people, you're 410,000 and 1 million. That's a growth rate of 140% odd. Here's GBT's calculations. So the Indigenous people are the fastest growing people in history, bar none, full stop. Okay, so there's no way there's any corruption there, is there? So can we at least look at that first? Because imagine how it feels to be proper Indigenous people with a culture that's been hammered and you've been dispossessed and all the rest of it. And along comes Polly and says, oh yeah, on my great grandmother's side, somebody was Aboriginal, I'm Indigenous too. You start wearing things and you want to act like you are. Okay, imagine how it feels for them. I know how it feels if someone claims to be Greek that wasn't. I wouldn't like it at all. At all. So that's one thing there. Look at the difference in population. Then just think to yourself, how is that possible? And how can we take ourselves seriously as a country and as a governance, overall governance, when we can't even see something as obvious as that fraud there? That's fraud. That's all that is. And why fraud? Aboriginal industry. Here's an aside. One of my current works, I say this in a few of the videos, is a historical piece set from 1790 to 1840. Now, that's fraught with danger for a lot of reasons, and that's fine. I can produce it myself. I don't really care. But I have sought assistance from different people. I'm trying to get someone cultural to help me with a certain part. So just to make sure I've got that sorted and maybe give a bit of insight or write up a scene or two for me, you know. And so I start looking at certain places and the amount of people that are in positions of power, in charge of culture, that claim Indigenous heritage. It's not the colour of the skin. Those of us who grew up around areas with Indigenous people, we know it's very easy to tell. There's a really cool hue of brown eyes that a lot of Indigenous people have. It's pretty unique to them. It's certainly not very European. And I sort of, let's be honest, I mean, I've got a Greek nose, so like it's nothing against Aboriginal noses, but they do have like a pronounced nose. So generally what happens is some of those features survive the mixture with the white man. And then if you don't have any of those features, you look really Irish and you identify as Aboriginal and you have a position that pays you money because you're Aboriginal. I'm not okay with that. In other words, I cannot point to this person and use them as a source because I can't credibly put their picture in a piece of work and say I spoke to Indigenous people. So this is the Aboriginal industry. And the whole of the Uluru Statement is part of this Aboriginal industry. You can catch on TikTok, Elder, I forget his name, it's fascinating. You know, as they say, black as the ace of spades. Like one of the few people in this country that will be fully, close to full-blood, if not full-blooded, and is saying straight out in English and his language that they didn't have a right to do that there. That's not their land. And Uluru can't speak for itself. And they don't speak for it because it's us, and we don't agree with this voice thing because it's our country. That's your country. Don't come here and tell us about our country and make it whole everybody's country. And this, I think, is pretty obvious to people if they're not brainwashed. So the Aboriginal industry is part of making sure that doesn't really make sense, right? That people don't understand that. But it's the equivalent of going to Greece and claiming that you're French and the French need to do something to run all of Europe, but we're in Greece. Do you understand? It's not right. And that's the Aboriginal industry. Now look at the money involved. This was a big kerfuffle. $40 billion goes to Indigenous people. Oh, and then there's fact checks too. So here's the fact checks, a couple of the fact checks. But the thing with fact checks, we know this now, is that they're not checking facts. They're trying to reframe the way you interpret those facts, whether through semantics or picking on semantics. Now they're trying to say now, oh no, it's not actually, it's only 6 billion that goes to them. No, that's wrong, you see, because blah, blah. Here's the deal. It's 40 billion that goes to Indigenous people. 6 billion to direct, programs that aren't part of anything that normally people get. $6 billion goes there. Then there's an additional, I've got the numbers there for you, 20 billion something, that goes through healthcare, education, these sorts of things. Okay. And it's obviously going to be pretty expensive because there's some parts of our country that are very remote, and so people to even get services out there at all, it must be very expensive. So it's not going to be the most efficient. And then the rest gets topped up with other things like borders, roads, national stuff like that. So what that $40 billion represents is the totality of services that they receive, the totality they get from the country's coffers. Okay, it's not just programs, that's the totality, water, whatever. You should know what totality means. So in that they start brawling, no, because it's not there. No, it's 40 billion. So that's 40,000 per person. 40,000 per person. That's a lot of money. Australia collects 500,000, 500 billion, something like that, for 27 billion people. 27 million people, sorry. And that would equate to about 20,000 a person. So they get double the money that the rest of the country gets. I don't have a problem with that. I know some of you racists will have a problem with that. But when you say, you're not paying the rent, well, we kind of are. Yeah, we are. But that's not going to good places. So let's look at that. $6 billion direct funding gets wasted. That's a huge amount of money. You could build P to 12 as well as university campuses specifically for Indigenous people, maybe some sort of, boarding campus where they come from everywhere and as a group and meet from different nations and not just learn math and blah, 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 but create a curriculum and create a history, where they will learn and document and shit, yeah, create if they have to some of the historical events to collect the dots and try and let's get a 60,000 year history going. And let's be the country with the oldest history in the world. And then the experts are here in Alice Springs, and it's an Indigenous university. Do you know how much money that will generate for the country and how much prestige? Oh God, no! But what we need is to go into Marshall Hyden's pocket, Noel Pearson's pocket, and all these other assholes out there. While the kids are there with no food, no education, no one caring about them. And then whenever the racists want to have a go, they just take a camera and have a look. Oh, look at these kids! They're on a riot. Well, of course they are. Have you been to Alice Springs? I have. It's fucking boring. There's nothing there. So there are 50 kids. Of course they're going to get up to mischief. Any 50 kids will get up to mischief. So that is my take on things. I think that we have such a long way to go, and I fear we're not going to get anywhere because the activists are captured by the politicians and the mining companies. They're captured. They're in the streets squealing about Australia Day. Who cares about Australia Day? Until these idiots started talking about Australia Day, then the racists jumped up and said, hey, you can't touch Australia Day, right? It's a proxy. It's a proxy. Because one of the things that we take pride in this country is the lack of jingoism, the lack of symbolism and all this crap and flags on our chests like the Americans. And, right, this isn't Australia. We don't like this crap. So I don't know how we move forward, but there's some facts for you. There's my opinion. Share it, spread it. I feel very passionately about this. There's nothing I can really do about it. I'm not in a position of authority or power, but I can share an opinion and hopefully we can all talk about it and get some scrutiny. And if Dutton wants to do it, he's got my vote. I don't like the guy, but if he wants to look at this and get it practical, he's got my vote.